For Aralia Bahena, as for all of us, some of life's choices have been made long before life itself begins. Home might be a small agrarian village or a bustling urban metropolis. A family can be 2 or 20. Living a life of immense wealth and opportunity, or a life sentence of desperate poverty and dead ends. But one uniform reality shared by all is that to be human is to be one among many. An individual, to be sure, but also a member of something called the human race, connected to those around us in a complex web of groups and relationships. It is that web of groups and relationships that not only provides the context for life as we know it, but also provides a kind of roadmap of life's limitations and possibilities. It is also the essence of the social science known as sociology.
When people think about what makes the world like it is or what makes their lives like they are, it's easy to see physical phenomena, the weather or a new machine. It's relatively easy to see biological phenomena that matter to us. We see the government having an effect through laws that are passed. But there is also a wide range of social phenomena that make the world what it is for us. Sometimes we don't see them because we tend to exaggerate how consciously individuals can choose what to do in their world and forget the extent to which the culture that you grow up in shapes what choices you will make and shapes how people will respond to them.
The United States is a very individualistic society. We tend to focus on the individual. We tend to focus on that person's internal processes. We psychologize rather than sociologize. For this reason, sociology is a very important discipline because it encourages us to look beyond the individual, to explain successes and failures and social phenomena in terms of our social institutions and our culture. So we look at the ways in which things outside the individual channel the individual and influence his or her behavior in the workplace, in the family, in the community, in houses of worship.
Being able to see the big picture, to look beyond the limited realm of the individual, is a concept that Columbia University sociologist C. Wright Mills called the sociological imagination.
And I think that really captures the nub of what sociology is. When he talks about sociology as the intersection of history and personal biography, anchored in a social structure. So what it does is forces people to see that their individual concerns, individual problems and issues that we encounter in society are more often than not simply individual shortcomings or concerns, but rather reflect larger social concerns and social problems which an individual experiences.
If I had to really narrow down, I think, the core insight or the thing that distinguishes sociology from other disciplines, it would be the focus on the group. The notion that humans don't exist sort of as itemized individuals. Humans exist in groups and collectivities. Their actions are often influenced by the actions of others, the expectations they have about others' views of them. So it's humans in relationship with other humans and the societies they build, the cultures that spring from those societies that really define the realm of sociology.
Sociology, I think, is something that can be hard to define. You see it in some books as the study of social life, or the study of group behavior, or the study of social interaction. And those definitions never really satisfied me. So I told myself when I was in school, I was not going to accept my PhD until I had come up with a satisfactory definition of sociology. And I couldn't do it. And I think after about 15 years now of studying sociology, I've finally come up with something that I like, which is that sociology is the study of why things don't have to be this way. So I think that using sociology allows us to see how things came to be this way. And if we want to change something, studying the way of how it came to be this way allows us to make those sorts of changes.
While much of sociology involves analyzing the limits and constraints society imposes, the notion that change is possible, that problems can be solved, is a critical aspect of sociology as well.
This was a discipline that was created in the early 19th century in response to the growing industrialization of this country, the growth of cities in this country, and in response to the impact that large waves of immigrants had on this country.
With the birth of this new social science Auguste Comte called sociology, came its chief practitioners, known appropriately as sociologists.
We are the kinds of people who are hired, asked to identify what's wrong with society typically and how to fix it. And increasingly in the late 20th century, we're asked to come up with proposals to how to make it better, and then to evaluate the effectiveness of the changes that other policy program analysts and people like me suggested that more important people implement on a daily basis.
When people come into an institution, whether it's a corporation or whether it's a prison, and they want to know what's happening, if they go to the CEO or the warden, they'll get one story. If they go to those who are doing research on the ground about the actual behavior, have a totally different understanding of what's happening in a corporation or a prison or a society. When sociology is doing its job, it's raising the most important questions about what's happening in a society, an institution or an organization that can't be understood by looking at the surface.
Frequently, the questions raised by sociologists concern social inequities of one kind or another.
It gives you an insight into not only the nature of the problems, but potential ways of remedying them and solutions that could be put to use to rectify those situations. And so, for example, whether we're talking about youth and, say, delinquency, whether we're talking about educational inequalities, I think that sociology is very perceptive in trying to identify the nature of problems. And I think that's always the very first step in trying to find, some useful remedy for them.
Most of the research that you hear about on educational differences between various ethnic and race groups and how they've changed over time, how high school dropout rates by ethnicity and race are narrowing or widening, how college enrollment rates by gender and ethnicity and so on are narrowing or widening, and being able to describe how our society has changed in terms of access to opportunity. Most of the research behind those discussions that we hear in everyday life and in the newspapers every day has been generated by sociologists and social demographers.
I think one of the reasons I chose sociology as a field is because I think it is one of the most relevant fields out there in terms of how can you understand what's going on in society, not just to explain how does X affect Y, but what are the consequences, who benefits, who loses. So sociology is not just some sort of static, tired old thing where you write something and it gets thrown on a shelf and nobody reads it. Hopefully sociology is something that, as I tell my students, you will learn to live and breathe sociology. It will affect how you talk. It will affect how you see a movie, what you think of it. It will affect who you vote for. So to me, sociology is something that's not just a course that's taught or something that's written. Sociology is more like a way of life. It's a way of looking at the world that can then change the world.